Gotta go. Come on, save. Gotta go.
Oh, come on.
Like so many things in life, fantasy football is exactly the same way. Sometimes you wait too long, you miss out on a huge opportunity. Let's talk some players you need to buy low on before the season starts. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking about a few players that you need to get your hands on right away. Now is the time to buy low. Once the season starts, if these guys have a couple good games, there's no way you're going to pry them away from the owners who drafted them later in drafts. Now is the time. If your draft hasn't happened yet, these are a few names you need to focus on there in the mid to late rounds. If your draft is over, the owners of these players may not be overly excited about it right now. Go in there, make a lowball deal. You never know. It could pay off because start of the season, these guys could be very, very beneficial to your fantasy football teams. All right, also, just a quick reminder, our draft guide's still for sale up on our website, thefantasyheadliners.com. If you haven't had your draft yet, it's definitely something you need to get your hands on. They're flying off the virtual shelves. Plus, if you buy one before September 4th, you're entered to win an autographed Marlon Mack jersey, as well as some headliner swag. So get yourself entered into that contest. Help yourself have a very successful draft and a very successful 2019 fantasy football season. But now, let's go talk about 5 players that you need to buy low right now. All right, first guy up on the list is going to be a quarterback, so more than likely you're not going to trade for a quarterback here early before the season if your draft has already happened. But if you haven't drafted yet, I'm stocking up on those running backs and wide receivers, and I'm taking Jimmy Garoppolo late. Right now has a 14th round ADP, and people absolutely panicked, hopped off the bandwagon. Whatever positivity was surrounding the San Francisco 49ers offense, and Jimmy Garoppolo disappeared after week 2 of the preseason. I mean, they made it sound like the guy had never played football before. Don't forget, though, that was his first game action since September 23rd of last year. The guy needed some time. He looked a lot better in week 3 of the preseason, though. The throws were on time. He looked fluid in the pocket. He was moving well, making decent decisions. I mean, the more action this guy gets in a game, the better he's going to be. And he has a ton of weapons now to use in San Francisco. Let's look at last year for the 49ers. Last season, the San Francisco 49ers quarterbacks combined for 4,247 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions. And that's with 13 games being started by a mixture of Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard, which a lot of you had probably never even heard of. However, those combined numbers, if you were to combine them into one quarterback, they would have finished as quarterback 10. And those quarterbacks really didn't have a whole lot of weapons. I mean, they had George Kittle, they had Dante Pettis towards the end of the year, they had a banged-up Matt Breida, and a bunch of other running backs that no one else had even heard of. I mean, there's people all over the San Francisco 49ers offense last year that people were starting in fantasy matchups that they had no idea who they were. It's because the offense works. The offense moves the ball. Now, you get Jimmy G with a healthy Marquise Goodwin, Dante Pettis in his second year, a couple young studs in Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd to go along with George Kittle and a nice backfield combination of Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida, because apparently Jerick McKinnon's never going to be healthy again. But now let's look at Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he's been calling plays in the NFL for the last 11 years. And 7 times he's finished inside the top 10 out of those 11 years. In the NFL in pass attempts for the season, they're going to throw the ball a lot in San Francisco. They have pass-catching running backs, a lot of young weapons on the outside, people that can make plays happen not only after the catch, but in the red zone. Right now, Jimmy G is currently being drafted as quarterback 21. And we mentioned earlier that the combination of not only him, but Mullins and Beathard last year still would have been a combined quarterback 10 in fantasy football. A healthy Jimmy G with all of those weapons, yeah, put me on that bandwagon, because in the 14th round, a lot of people are picking kickers and defense. You could get your starting quarterback. All right, let's move on to the running back position, and before you shut the video off, hear me out on this one. It's Kenyan Drake, running back Miami Dolphins. Right now, He's back into the 7th round ADP, and the offseason did him absolutely no favors. I mean, at the beginning of training camp, at the beginning of preseason, there was a lot of rumors and hype surrounding Kalen Ballage because he was getting the bulk of the number 1 reps in training camp. And then Kenyan Drake injured his foot, not only missed practice, but spent time in a walking boot. And now his ADP has dropped by 2 rounds. People hopping off this bandwagon just about as fast as they were Jimmy G after week 2 of the preseason. People are just not excited to draft or own Kenyan Drake right now at this point. And this is when you should take advantage of it. And let me tell you why. Now, you can get him at a price in which you don't have to count on him weekly. Just a month or so ago, if anybody who drafted early, where you had to draft Kenyan Drake, he was going to be one of your weekly starters. Now, that may not be the case. He's back at practice. He looks good and maybe one of the only bright spots in that offense. That is, if he stays in that offense. There's rumors going around that he could be shopped around. Does he land somewhere? Maybe with an opportunity for more work. It's entirely possible. But even if he doesn't, he's on a team that's not going to be good. The Dolphins are going to suck. They're basically tanking before the season has started. They're going to be trailing regularly, constantly behind and having to throw the ball. Insert Kenyan Drake. He finished as running back 14 in PPR leagues last year, despite only a total of 173 touches. So even if he does split time with Kalen Ballage, he isn't, dependent on getting a huge amount of touches in this offense. Right now, he's being drafted as running back 34 in PPR leagues. This is the perfect time. If you're making any preseason trades, try to get Kenyan Drake thrown into the deal. You may get him super cheap. Like I said, people are not excited to own Kenyan Drake right now. However, you could end up with a solid weekly flex play that was just a throw into a trade here preseason. The upside is still there. The opportunity could still be there, and maybe he's traded to a contender and gets a better opportunity at some point. You never know. The risk is more minimal now than it was a month ago. I'm taking it on Kenyan Drake if I can get it. A wide receiver next is going to be Marvin Jones, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. And I'm on social media quite a bit, but did I miss a video of this guy? Did he beat somebody's dog? What's going on? Why do people not care about Marvin Jones here in 2019? Yes, he had an injury-shortened season in 2018. However, before he left with that injury, he was on pace for just over 900 yards and 9 touchdowns. This is a guy who was a top 12 wide receiver in 2017 and is still one of the most trusted targets of Matthew Stafford, a more healthy Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has never had less than 555 pass attempts in a season for his career, and that even includes last year when apparently he played in 16 games with a broken back. Sure, they're going to focus more on the running game this year in Detroit, and they do have Kenny Golladay and TJ Hawkinson as well as a healthy Kerryon Johnson. But Marvin Jones is never going to be that wide receiver that goes out there and catches 100 balls. Right now, being drafted as wide receiver 43, I'm doing whatever I can to make a deal for Marvin Jones. This is a guy with huge touchdown upside, huge big playability, and an offense that has been known to throw the ball quite a bit. Marvin Jones has continued to slip in drafts, and he's somebody that I'm trying to target before the season starts. This is somebody who in the first few weeks could absolutely explode, and then you're not getting him from nobody. All right, how about another wide receiver? We got Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, still with a 9th round ADP also. It absolutely amazes me how much stock people put in to just a couple series here in the preseason, kind of like we've mentioned already here earlier in the video. People are already not only hating the Kingsbury offense in Arizona, but they're also hating Kyler Murray. People are already starting to label him as a bust. Give the guy a break. He's been in the NFL for like a couple months. He's only seen a few series on the field. Give the guy a chance. By no means has he been perfect, but he's shown flashes as to why he was taken number 1 overall. Do you really think that Arizona's going to go out there and show their hand in a couple meaningless preseason games? Was Kyler even playing with his top weapons during the time that he was playing? Now, I know it's easy for people nowadays just to quit on things. It's like the cool thing to do all of a sudden, but give it more time than just a couple preseason series. Larry is one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, a sure-handed, reliable safety valve. Now, he mentioned retiring after last season, And yet here he is. Do you think he really came back just to be an afterthought in this offense? The Arizona defense could struggle to start the year also. They're going to be without their top 2 starting defensive backs. Opposing teams may be able to score at will the first few weeks of the season on them. What does that mean for Larry Fitzgerald and the Cardinals? It forces them to throw all 4 quarters. Heck, yes, it may be garbage points, and the Cardinals may win 3 games all year. I don't care. I want fantasy points. And if they're throwing for 4 quarters, I trust that Larry Fitzgerald has the ability to still get open. Now, yes, recently Michael Crabtree was signed by the Arizona Cardinals, and he may take away a few red zone looks in this offense, but when the going gets tough, when Kyler's pressured, when he needs a safe option, it's going to be Larry Fitzgerald. He may not go out there anymore and get you your 1,500 yards in the season. He may not sniff double-digit touchdowns, but in the 9th round, possibly as your wide receiver 3 or 4 on your bench anyway, the upside is still there. The consistency is still there. If you're ever in a pinch in fantasy football, he may be one of the safer options to throw in your lineup at a moment's notice. Last guy we're talking about, it's Sammy Watkins, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, who also has a 9th round ADP still. Do you remember how hyped up people were with Sammy when we all thought that Tyreek Hill was going to be suspended? I mean, then the news came out that Hill wasn't going to have any suspension, and then all of a sudden the value of Sammy Watkins just tanked for some reason. I mean, at one point, he was up into the early 5th round of fantasy drafts as far as ADP. Now he's all the way back in the 9th round, at the end of the 9th round. Now, I know he's the number 3 pass-catching weapon there behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but this is the best offense in the NFL. Why not invest in a part of that offense that you can get pretty cheap on draft day? Now, I know Sammy Watkins is an injury risk. He still is, and he probably always will be. But in the back half of the 9th round, he's a bench wide receiver for your team more than likely anyway, and his upside is huge. Sammy still has elite talent, and he seems to be healthy entering the season. Heck, last year, he finished 3rd in the NFL among wide receivers in target separation at 1.91 yards of separation on his targets. What does that mean? That means the closest defender was almost 6 feet away. That is wide open in the NFL. Now you pair that with the fact that 83.6% of his targets were catchable because Patrick Mahomes was putting it on point, and he only had 1 drop all year. Add a few more targets to this equation, we could see some pretty big numbers for Sammy Watkins. Huge upside, less risk for the price, and right now, he's being drafted as wide receiver 39 coming off the boards. Why not take a stab on Sammy Watkins? If anybody goes down in that offense, he's going to get a bump in production, and he's just a bench wide receiver anyway. It's hard to turn away the value. I'm buying Sammy Watkins late or trying to trade for him before the season, because you know whoever has him is always just going to label him as an injury risk anyway. Take the chance, minimal risk. I like Sammy Watkins still. All right, so those are 5 guys right now that I'm targeting, trying to buy low. Whether I've drafted yet or not, it doesn't matter. If I haven't drafted, I'm targeting these guys right around that 9th, 10th, 11th round or so, trying to get these guys on my roster because the potential upside is huge. I mean, what happens if Tyreek Hill, goes down week 1? All of a sudden, that value for Sammy Watkins shoots back up, and you got him for cheaper. Maybe you already had your draft. Go to the owner of some of these teams and just act like you're throwing him in there. Say, hey, listen, I know Sammy's an injury risk. I'll take him also. Go ahead and just throw him in the deal. It'll be my problem, not yours. Maybe they'll bite on it. If they do, now, yeah, you have minimal risk invested, but what happens if that value shows up? You hardly paid anything for it. Sometimes you got to take a risk, especially in the middle to late rounds. These are the guys to risk it on, but I want to know what you think. Are there other players out there maybe whose value has really dipped over the past couple weeks? If so, put it down below in the comment section. I'd love to go back and forth with you. We're one of the most interactive channels on YouTube. This community continues to grow, and I'm starting to learn and meet so many more people that are a part of Headliner Nation, and it's definitely a cool thing to be a part of. If you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button. Like I said, this is a fantasy football community that is just huge, enthusiasts that's built around a positive mentality, trying to have fun with fantasy football. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you could. That'll greatly help us out here on YouTube. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. Go get your draft guides. If you haven't drafted yet, we want to make sure as many people win championships as humanly possible here in 2019. Hopefully you all have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later. And I totally forgot what I was going to say. But I'm trying to draft Linda. Player for your the